we have prepared some examples to explain how we work with OpenBugs. In particular, we have the VPR, the fatigue, the parabolic regression, the Pearsall correlation, and the rate models. In this case, we are going to work with the VPR example. So we start the VPR main program and execute MATLAB. The MATLAB window opens, and then we start the VPR main program. We start the program, and immediately it runs, and it gives first the data in three-dimensional plot. Then we select a folder in which we want the results to be stored. And then immediately OpenBugs executes, and you see how the MATLAB program is able to call the OpenBugs, and the script is used to execute the OpenBugs. And then we can execute this very fast. It takes only a few seconds. Next, we start the MATLAB part of the computer program, and then we get different plots. For example, the history plots. We obtain the density plots for the different parameters, and even we can plot pairs of parameters. For example, in this example, you have gamma and alpha, and this other example, you have alpha and other parameters. So you get these posterior densities for the beta parameter, for the alpha parameter, as you can see there. You can see the history plot for the sigma parameter, the history plot for the gamma parameter, the same for the beta, and the same for the alpha. So you can see that there is a very nice regularity. That means that the program has had no problems. Next, we are going to explain some commands of the MATLAB programs. The first part refers to the you want to close all the figures, all the variables, and everything. Next, we have the VPR example in which we have the initial data, which are here. And next, the data is not real, it is simulated. Here you have the commands file, how to generate the command files. You can see that you see a sequence of lines in MATLAB, which are print commands, so that you print line by line model, the for loop, the mu expression, the relative travel time, the sigma, which is the distribution of type gamma. You have the tau, we have the alpha, the beta, and the gamma. So you just need to print one by one the lines of your commands, so that MATLAB is able to do it for you very fast. Next, we have the data file in which you need to generate the data, so that you generate the data automatically and you don't need to type it by yourself, because the computer program does that for you. And next, you go to the initial values file that you write a short program just to prepare this value. Then you generate the script file with all the commands. You just print the commands using MATLAB. And then you reach the part of the computer program that calls either JAX, if you have selected that option, or OpenBugs. So this is the OpenBugs part, as you can see. And then this is the list of commands that are executed. In particular, the OpenBugs software is executed with this command. It's called with this command, the system, and a file in which you just indicate the path where the computer program is. So next, you need to recover the simulated samples by OpenBugs, and then you create initially alpha, beta, gamma, and sigma arrays in order to store this information. Next, you have a for loop in which you generate one by one the alpha, the beta, the gamma, and the sigma values. And to do that, you have a procedure which is read parameter file, and you just copy from the file given by OpenBux to your variable for the different chains. In this case, we have 3 chains. Then you move all these files to the folder that you have indicated at the beginning, so that everything is together in a single folder. Next, you plot the parameter history of the parameters, so the different parameters, and then you do that using a plot command that you evaluate for the different parameter names. Next, you draw the parameter density functions of the different parameters, of the different parameters, and then you can also plot the dimensional samples, for example, the case of alpha and beta, or you can plot alpha and gamma, or finally, you can plot the gamma and beta. So what we are going to do now is to execute the program by parts, so that you can see what we get. So we start the program, you immediately get a 3-dimensional plot in which you have the number of cars that are circulating in your direction or in the contrary or reverse direction, and this is the sample that we are going to use in this VPR model. Next, you have to choose some place to store this folder. Then the commands files are generated by MATLAB. I printed by MATLAB line by line, which is this part. Next, the data file is generated and stored in the computer, and then you end with closing the file. Next, you do the same for the initial value files for the different chains. Next, you know that you open and close as many files as the chains you have. Next, you generate the script file, and then you just print in MATLAB line by line. And then you reach the execution part of the program. You can have the Ajax, or you can have OpenBux, as it is the case here. And then you execute that, and this is the command that calls, the system command calls the OpenBux, as you can see, because it is executed immediately and very fast. Once you have done that, you need to read the simulation, you need to recover the information, the simulations that are generated by OpenBux, and then you store them in alpha, beta, gamma, and sigma variables. Then you copy this by means of a for loop, as many cycles as the number of chains, in this case 3 chains. Then you move this information to your folder, so that you have this information in case you need it later. Next, you plot the parameter history, and then you will see that you can see here that the different sequences of parameter values are shown graphically, and you see that the aspect is really nice and very regular. Next, you plot the density functions of the parameters, and then this is done, and this is done for each chain, so you get 3 different plots, one for each chain. You can do a single plot with all of them together if you like, but it is interesting to plot the 3 plots in order to see or to check that there are no important differences. Next, you can plot different bidimensional samples, as it is the case here of alpha and beta. Then you get bidimensional functions of alpha and gamma. And finally, you can get the gamma and beta bidimensional plots, so that you can decide if the variables are dependent or not. Next, you can check the folder BPR that you have selected at the beginning with all the information. There you have all the files that you can need in order to work later with it. For example, you can see the script file, as you can see there, the initials 3, 2, and 1, and the data and the commands file. Everything is there. You have also the sample. You have also all the plots in PDF, so that you can cut and paste in your papers, in your research papers immediately. And this is all you can do. As you can see, it is a very interesting program because you can work very fast and you get very important information. It is a new way of working. You work with samples instead of the analytical expressions of densities.